that will have the skin with Jim Flynn. If either of these guys throws a strike, they will win the skin. This $10 skin in the first box. Rich Clark, the lefty, bidding for a strike and leaving the 10. And now Chris Sargent off target.
Well, so far advantage Jim Flynn. They can only have the box now. Rich Clark has got a duff piece of wood in front of that 7-pin.
Oh, he carried. So that's a carryover. Box number 2 will be worth $20. Again, as a reminder, the fills on marks do not count relative to winning a skin. In other words, Jim and Rich both have the spare up. That causes the carryover. The fill, although it does count in the score, obviously, counts toward the next box in terms of the skin.
Jim with the fill on the spare, just 3.
And Joe. And he will have a spare leave on the 3-pin. Jim Flynn goes inside and converts for another spare. Great shot. 2 great shots for Jim Flynn here. And Joe puts a spare up as well. Let's take a look at Jim Flynn's spare.
Late and inside, the ball goes down and clips the 6-pin, which eventually takes the 10. Head pin does the damage on the rest. He's another spare up on the board, so it's going to take a strike to win this box.
Chris Sargent. Pretty good looking ball, but...
And then there was 1. Rich Clark must throw a strike to win the skin. And we'll have another carryover.
That's an 8 fill for Rich on his spare. And Chris Sargent throws a spare up on the board. See if Rich can make it another one. No, just sliding by. Bidding for 4 spares across.
Rich might have been a little too careful with that, trying to slice the 2-pin on the left-hand side. He might have been able to get away with it playing in the inside and have the ball come off and flip that wood, but we'll never know. 27 for Rich, 18 plus a ball for Chris Sargent.
And now we have a $30 skin here in the 3rd box with 2 carryovers.
Like those carryovers. That money mounts up. It gets real interesting, and you see the bowlers start rooting for each other.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet down there so far. Joe off the head pin. He'll take 6 on his spare. Jim Flynn waiting for the pins to reset on lane 29. He's working on a spare also. He's got 2 in a row. And we've got a mechanical problem on lane 29, so I'm going to pause a second. A reminder while we have this pause that we will have Candlepin Stars and Strikes for you, our season premiere tomorrow at 12 noon here on the Winds of New England. It'll be our first show of the brand new season, and we hope that you will join us for it. Of course, every Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon, all the great Candlepin action here on the Winds of New England. And tomorrow at 12 noon, we will begin our brand new singles season from Park Place Lanes in Wyndham, and we'll give you the particulars on who will bowl a little bit later in the hour. Jim Flynn now with a 9 fill.
And to wait a little extra time. We had a little mechanical problem there, but still was able to drop 9. Joe Ashline, 6 on a spare and another spare. Jim Flynn for his 3rd in a row.
Yes. Let's take a look at Joe Ashline's effort here.
1, 5, 7, 8. Piece of wood helps him out. Tough shot, though. Looks like it's going to take a strike to win a skin here.
And we haven't had any strikes yet. Rich Clark.
Big 9-pin drop for Rich Clark. Leaves the 4-pin. Chris Sargent bidding for a strike.
Boy, Chris has thrown a couple of strike-looking balls, but hasn't really worked out for him. So we will have yet another carryover. Rich Clark misses the single. Chris Sargent now for his spare, and he can't convert.
A little too far right on the wood. He turned the wood away from the 7-pin. Rich Clark with the 10.
And Chris with the 10. So another carryover with spares, 3rd box in a row. And now we have a $45 skin here in the fourth.
Will anyone win a skin? After all this, some of you get an 8-box and win the skin.
Well, Jim Flynn has a shot for 4 marks in a row. Here's Joe Ashline. And Joe takes out a couple extra.
Jim's looking at the 3 and 6 pins. Piece of wood just to the left should help him.
4 spares in a row for Jim Flynn. Joe can't convert. And it's 9.
52 for Joe, 60 as you can see for Jim, plus the bonus ball. 37, 36 respectively for Rich Clark and Chris Sargent.
Chris just off the head pin this time, and that's a pretty ugly looking split. Rich Clark, though, will have a spare leave, chance to have the skin. Let's see if he does have it. Yes, indeed. For another carryover. And a 9-box for Chris Sargent. So that makes this 5th box worth $60 now.
Actually a bowling game within a bowling game, because don't forget this total pinfall, the score counts. 2 highest 2-game total, those bowlers will return next week, chance to win more skins. So it's very important that they not only get the skins but get the score as well.
Well, Jim's going to have a challenge this time. He's got 4 marks in a row, but tough split right there. 2 tough splits up on the lanes, and
Joe, what a bid.
Oh.
Snapped the 4-pin with a piece of wood across from left to right, but cleared out the 6, but not the 10.
So Jim Flynn's mark string ends at 4. Joe takes a 10-box. He's got a 62 through 5. Jim Flynn takes 9. He's got 74 through 5. And now the door is open for Rich Clark and Chris Sargent with this $60 skin up for grabs.
Oh, I got a feeling Rich Clark is thinking strike. Ooh.
Instead, he gets split. An 8 fill on his mark, though. Chris Sargent almost won it right there with the strike. Well, possibilities here for Rich. We might have 2 marks here. Let's see.
To clip that wood on the right-hand tip, the left-hand tip, I should say. It's going right now. I think the left-hand tip was his shot.
For the skin for Chris Sargent, and he's got it. That's $60 for Chris. And an important mark, too, because he was trailing in total pinfall. We will take a timeout here. Halfway through box number 1, game number 1, I should say. Jim Flynn in the lead, making his 5th straight appearance here on Candlepin Skins. We'll be back in a minute. Back we are, and Jim Flynn ready to go. Boy, what a run he has had. This is his 5th straight week on Candlepin Skins, going back to the end of last season. And Joe Ashline, this is his 4th week in a row. These guys have advanced together, kind of as a team over the last 3 shows. And there's another spare for Jim Flynn.
And all Jim done is, since he's been back, is throw 5 marks out of 6 boxes, all spares.
Joe Ashline somehow got that wood out of the way without knocking anything over. 9-box. So the spare is up on the board for Jim, and that's what Rich and Chris have to shoot at here. This is a $15 skin here in the 6th.
How much you have there?
Well, Chris Sargent with a 9 fill and another single pin spare opportunity, but
Yeah.
That piece of wood is definitely in play, and it
Yes.
is right in front of the 5-pin.
Oh, what
Got
a
it.
shot.
Terrific shot. And that will be a carryover. Oh, great shot for Rich Clark as well. His third mark. 3 marks up in that 6th box. Let's get a look at Rich Clark's spare. Both difficult shots.
Just barely touched the head pin going to left to right because of the left-hander, and just enough to scramble those 5 pins. And 3 marks up for Jim, Rich, and Chris.
That's another carryover. This 7th box is worth $40. And it's
big
a 9
break.
drop for Joe Ashline.
Where he had the 1, 3, and 7 pins up there, and a piece of wood came from nowhere to knock the 1 and 3 down. Jim Flynn, 6 drop on his spare.
Spare for Joe. His third. Not this time for Jim. $10. 100 through 7 for Jim Flynn.
But Joe Ashline is right on his heels, as is Rich Clark and Chris Sargent. Nobody's out of this match.
Nope.
It's going to be very close.
Can't believe we haven't seen a strike yet.
I know.
We had all these spares, but no strikes. Well, let's see.
I was going to say that usually happens after we say something.
my.
If that fell backwards, he had a shot at it.
Tough break for Rich. And 9 drop for Chris
Hang on.
Sargent again.
No.
Well, we could have another carryover. Certainly, Chris has a better shot at a spare than Rich does, but you never know.
He's got to go way left. Get that wood start to move. He's got a shot at it. Oh, great shot.
Wow.
Great effort.
For the carryover, yes. Another fine shot on a single pin for Chris Sargent. He's had 2 singles in a row, but neither one of them was an easy shot. That's a 10 bucks for Rich. So yet another carryover. Here's Rich Clark's effort. Played as far left as he possibly could. Watch the wood. Oh, just behind him. So now, box number 8 is worth $65.
Come on. Well, Jim.
Joe Ashline with that explosive ball. 7 drop on his spare. Not much of a lead, though. Ooh, Jim's got it on the lane. Oh, do you believe- how many times did that ball go by there?
Only 2 tries at it?
Wow. Good effort for Joe, but no spare.
Did I hear too bad? Too bad. From one of those rollers sitting down there. I think. I don't know. I'm not sure. That was a 9 for Joe. Or was it 10?
Looked like it might have been a 9.
You can look at this. I thought it stayed on the land.
We'll call it a 9 right now. We'll review it. That's one of those tie goes to the runner situations, maybe.
Could be. I was looking at my scoreboard here, and all of a sudden I looked up and I saw the wood in the channel move. So, but I didn't really watch the flight of the ball. So.
We'll check that one out during the break, but for right now, the computer will read 9. Now remember, there are no marks up on the board here yet. This is a $65 skin here in the 8th for Chris Sargent. Another pin fell over for Chris, maybe not the one he wanted. Well,
This for 4 in a row for Chris.
and he's got it. And it'll be for the skin unless Rich Clark can come up with a terrific shot here.
That's a pretty tough shot. 4, 5, 7.
So Chris Sargent making the money here. He's got all 8 skins in this first game for $125 to this point. And here's how he got it. The 3, 9, and 10, just like that.
With authority. He's now got a string of 4. Jim Flynn opened with 4. Still looking for our first strike, and there it is.
$25 skin here in the 9th. Jim Flynn bidding for a spare? No.
Not quite the reaction he thought he was going to get off that piece of wood. Nor did I. I thought he'd have a chance of making that spare, but
Joe Ashline with the first strike of the day on the Brooklyn side.
yes, pesky little 6-pin, but there it goes.
Oh, that's up. No.
So that means someone has to strike to have the skin, or else Joe will have it.
One down, I think. Wait a minute. Chris Sargent, last chance to have the skin or Joe Ashline's. Oh, good bid.
So Joe Ashline takes $25. Thanks the rest of the bowlers very politely. No. Rich has 9. And so does Chris Sargent. In the meantime, we got a very tight match going here.
Absolutely. 19 pins separate all 4 bowlers. However, Joe, being the low man, has got the strike working, the only mark working in the 9th.
The $50 10th box. Jim Flynn.
Ouch.
Now Joe working on a strike here, remember.
Oh,
Oh, he's got the double.
same thing in the Brooklyn side. This one went a little quicker than the last one.
Well, Jim Flynn, who started the game with 4 marks in a row, is going to end up with probably a disappointing score based on the start he had. He'll take a 127, and that may not even be good enough for 3rd place. He may be trailing.
Watch how quick this one goes. Get out of there, 6-pin. There it goes. A little quicker than the last one.
Joe will finish his game now. So he'll stay up there on lane 29. Got the double strike working.
Still has another bonus ball to come.
And it'll be a 143 for Joe Ashline as he comes up with 46 pins in the last 2 boxes.
97 in the 8th to 143 for a final score.
Now again, only the strike for Joe counts toward this $50 skin. So again, one of these guys will have to throw a strike to have it. Chris can't. And Rich can't either. Although he's still got him rocking down there, but it'll be a $50 skin for Joe Ashline. So Chris Sargent and Joe Ashline get all the skins money in that first game. Spare for Rich Clark in the 10th. 10 bucks for Chris Sargent. He'll take a 136. This is going to be a very tight match after this first game. Jim Flynn, who had the 4 marks in a row to start the game, may be in 4th place, depending on Rich Clark's fill here. Yep, a 9 fill, 129 for Rich Clark, so only 16 pins separating these 4 bowlers after 1 game here on Candlepin Skins. We'll be back to do it all again in game 2 when we come back. Don't go away. Here's how the skins money was doled out in that first game. Chris Sargent winning all the money early, and then Joe Ashline coming up with a couple of skins with that double strike in the 9th and 10th. And just to clarify, let's show the computer the box that was in question. The 8th box was a 10 for Joe Ashline, so his score has been corrected now to 144. So 144, not 143 for Joe Ashline in that first game. And Joe leads off game 2 in the lead.
And he'll shoot at the triangle, 3, 5, and 6.
Nope. Joe ran all the way to Derry to try and get that ball to do what he wanted, but it didn't work.
All right, Jim, come on, start it up.
So it's a 10. $10 skin here in the first box. And Jim Flynn now.
One, the 4, and the 7 pins for Jim. A piece of wood behind the head pin and another one in front of the 4 and 7. Catches the head pin, he's got a shot.
There it is. Started the last game with 4 marks in a row, but he's in 4th place right now. Not by much. Scores are close. Left-hander Rich Clark right in the pocket.
And he'll shoot at a triangle, 5, 8, and 9.
Maybe trouble on the right if he hits the wood. Yep.
You called it, Doug. Is that from listening to me all these years that you picked that stuff up, or?
No, I don't listen to you at all.
I'm just going to say the same thing to you. I was just going to ask you, did you mention to the viewers that we have a running total at the bottom of the screen?
I didn't, but if you'd like to point that out, now would be a good time to do it.
I thought you might have, and I really wasn't listening to you. Yes, unique. Thank you, Alden Warner from CompuScore. He's put the program in so your running 2-string total is at the bottom of the screen, so you can know box by box how the bowlers stand with that total pinfall. Remember, the highest 2 return next week.
All I can tell you is that in addition to your sound advice that is dispensed here every week as Chris Sargent creates the carryover.
See, now I'm listening to you and I made a mistake.
You're listening to me compliment you, and
yeah, I'm waiting for the zing.
In addition to your sound advice, I also have missed enough shots like that to know
I see.
that
well, I thank you for that compliment.
Sometimes the wood is very tempting when in fact it's not the right way to go, correct?
Wait till you get my age. It's real tempting. You want more and more of it. Joe Ashline for the 5-pin and a mark. He's right on it.
This is a $20 skin now here in the second.
Every time I take it out of someone's pocket, you chip me out of mine.
Bowlers chatting a little bit more now here in game 2. Jim Flynn working on a spare. On the head pin again, he caught it light.
All right, Jim, show a shot. Take it out of Joe's pocket.
And it's the junior high-low jack. The 2, 7, and 9. And he's got it.
And he matches Joe, so we have a double carryover unless Rich Clark or Chris Sargent can throw a strike. Rich will get up on lane 29. He is skinless so far.
As is Jim Flynn.
Right.
With all the marks he has.
Well, there it is.
Not quite.
My, how did that 9-pin stay up?
You might just have to take one right out.
Got it. 3 spares across here in the second.
Well, I think there's going to be a little more zip on this ball, or what? Chris Sargent knows it's already a carryover. He can kind of get up there and fire away, trying to get that strike.
And he got it.
Big smile on his face, too. Thank you, fellas. For a while, I thought it was like the 5 and 10. Then the 5 goes, and a wood twists around the 10-pin for the strike. And 2, 4, 6, 8 boxes completed. We've got 6 marks out of 8 boxes between the bowlers. Joe off target, but a good break, really. 1, 2, and 10 pins. 7 on the fill.
It's $145 now for Chris Sargent in skins. Oh, Joe's got another spare. Great shot.
Sign of a pretty good bowler. He gets a break, and then he manages to take advantage of it inside of the head pin. Ball comes down and comes back for the 3. The 2-pin, I should say. Jim Flynn working on a spare.
$10 skin here in the third. Jim has a 6 fill. And another spare. 3 in a row.
And we're right back in that same situation. Rich or Chris need a strike to win the box, to win the skin.
Rich working on his spare. And he's got the strike. That's the best ball he's thrown all day.
Well, advantage
Right to
Rich
show.
Clark.
Yep.
But don't you think that Chris isn't thinking, well, not only do I want to take the skin away from Rich, a double strike would really push me up close to Joe Ashline. Looks good, too. Whoa!
Wow.
That pin twisted behind the 3-pin and just missed it coming forward.
So Rich Clark is on the board with his first skin worth $10.
Lunch money.
Oh, and Chris misses the single. So it's a 9 fill on the strike. And it's still there.
Well, he does climb ahead of Joe Ashline, at least temporarily, by 3 pins, as you can see, but Joe has a spare working. Rich Clark, low man right now, but he's working on a strike when he gets up there.
Joe
Very
Ashline.
close.
Joe Ashline from Nashua, an account manager for Glynn Electronics. And this will be an interesting shot. The 2, 5, and the 8.
Let's shoot right at the 2-pin. Hopefully this piece of wood is going to go to the right sidewall, then come back, because I don't think, although he throws so hard, the ball may carry right straight through. But he's coming up real high. I don't think he really wanted to do that.
That's good.
Well, he'll be open.
With a 10.
198 now through 14 boxes for Joe Ashline.
And as Jim Flynn comes up, Dan, working on his 3rd mark in a row, as you see, Jim wanted me to make mention of something as we continue along in the show here. Jim wanted to dedicate his performance on today's show to his grandfather, Bertram Flynn from Beverly, who passed away just about a month or so ago at age 87. Jim's grandfather was a big bowling fan and a big fan of his. Always used to check with him every time he was on the show and every time he was on television to find out how he did. And Jim wanted to dedicate this series of shows to his late grandfather.
That's nice. Jim now has climbed within 9 pins of Joe Ashline. Now Rich Clark, chance for him to not only put another mark up for the skin, but climb right back in. Light hit, 7, 9, and 10, and let's see where the wood settles down. Wants that one to stay on. It's not going to. Well, he's going to have to play the wood in between the 9 and the 10, and hopefully the ball will take the 10 and everything else will go to the left. Oh, just went by it.
Just missed it. An 8 fill on the strike and another open, so any mark for Chris Sargent will win this skin here in the 4th. It's worth $15.
And a close match, as you can see. Well, any kind of a mark. Chris's skin, but he's more concerned right now, I think, with the total pinfall, and wants to come back next week.
On the head pin, needs a break. Doesn't get it.
Listen to the bowlers. Oh. Oh, too bad.
Let's see. No.
Oh, they were holding their breath, though.
And it's already a carryover with 10s, so Chris doesn't have to worry about making this one, although he'll cover it easily. And this 5th box will now be worth $30.
And look at the scores. 198 for Joe's leading, then Chris Sargent 194, Jim at 189, 185 for Rich. So all within a mark of each other.
Big first ball, Joe Ashline. Leaves the 7 pin somehow. Got it.
Spare in a 5th.
Might have heard Joe when he came back. He said, I thought I had a hammer. I thought he had the strike. So did we.
Jim Flynn trying to break up the 3, 4, and 6. Doesn't do it. He's going to have to do this all by himself. No wood to help him. Trying to split the 3 and the 6. Now he's going to go on the inside.
10.
Jim Flynn is the only guy that has not thrown a strike yet. He's also the only guy that hasn't won a skin yet. He'll take a 10 box this time.
Well, Rich Clark was low man going into this box. Chance to gain a few on Jim and Joe if he could put a mark up.
He's in the pocket, Brooklyn pocket for him, and he leaves a solid 7-pin. Rich works as the manager at Clark's Farm, the family farm from Bedford, New Hampshire. Puts the spare up in the 5th. And that means Chris Sargent can win the skin with a strike, or it'll be another carryover. Chris took a skin away a moment ago with a strike in just this situation. Not this time, however.
Wait a minute.
I knew it wasn't going to fall to the right. Lots of wood between Chris and the 10-pin here. And it looks like he pretty much has to hit it. And it covers. So that's 3 spares across in the 5th, creating a carryover. We will have a $45 6th box when we come back here on Candlepin Skins. Good look at Joe Ashline. Ready to go here at the Londonderry Bowling Center. We're in the middle of game 2. You see the carryover for this 6th box, and Joe almost got the strike up on the board. Boy, that could very easily have been a double strike. What happened last box?
2 crashing 9-pin drops on the 5th and now in the 6th frame. This time the 5-pin, and ooh, he slides by on the left.
And the 10.
Raises his total, as you can see, at 227.
And Joe is still reasonably comfortable in the lead, but the way these scores are, could have a lot of changing of position here in the last 5 boxes. Half Worcester, Jim Flynn.
I guess what's in his favor is you don't expect all 3 bowlers to get hot. But in this case, it'll only take 2 to pass him, and he'd be out like that.
Oh, how about
Nice shot. Where's it going to go?
The 10. Opportunities here for Rich Clark and Chris Sargent, not only to gain ground, but to win a skin here. Both working on spares. I understand you have tasted some of the fruits of the Clark family farm.
Oh, they have the best corn. I'll tell you. Hard-working family, boy. A lot of family members work at the farm. Another mark. But if you want shrubs or mums, that's the place to go.
Now you
A dying tradition, really.
You don't want to stop here. We're going to bill you for this.
Oh, yeah. Dying tradition in our country,
that's
I
very
think,
true.
really. It's big farm right up near St. Anne's, and St. Anselm's in Manchester.
Well, Rich Clark is looking in pretty good shape to win a skin here unless Chris Sargent can convert this ugly-looking leaf, which is just a 4 fill on his spare, by the way. So give the skin for $45 to Rich Clark. And give Chris Sargent a hard 9. That was a tough box.
Hit the object pin marks.
So you see the situation. Remember, the top 2 in total pinfall advance to next week. Joe Ashline.
Oh, Joe doesn't want to make too many mistakes now, going down last 4. 8-pane pin separates the bottom to the top.
This 7th box worth $25.
Be interesting to know when in the match do the bowlers kind of shift their attention to that total pinfall and put the skins as their second choice of winning. And I think right about now they're all thinking about the total pinfall. The skin is important, but not quite as important as the total pinfall.
Great battle for second going on right now. But Joe is not, as you said, Dan, not a lock for first, but he's still holding the lead right now. Jim had to wait it out. Boy, he really needed that mark too. He'd been open three boxes in a row. And Jim's still looking for his first skin. Didn't look like that wood would ever get there.
Rich Clark working on a pair of spares. He'll fill it right now, and he needs to keep marking. Off target a little bit, but not too bad. An 8-pin drop, the 1 and the 2. Got to be thinking one thing. I got to have the head pin.
If he does, it will be his 3rd mark in a row, and he's got it.
So all of a sudden, he's right with Joe Ashline. 5 pins behind, but he's got the mark working.
Now Chris Sargent, who can, again, win a skin if he throws a strike here. Not this time. Chris works for the city of Haverhill, which is where he lives. Looking for the spare? No, a little too full. So that's a carryover, and box number 8 will be worth $50. $9 box for Chris Sargent. So we check the scores again, and you see that Rich Clark with a big fill could take the lead over Joe Ashline.
Advantage Rich Clark right now. Joe has to watch. Jim Flynn is working on a mark.
And Joe gets a big kick out on the 6-pin.
Certainly was a big break there. 2 and the 4 left for Joe. Piece of wood locked in behind. He could actually go by the 2-pin, I believe, and hit the 4 and have the wood take the 2. But he wants to be on the 2-pin, and he is. Big mark there for Joe in the 8th.
Now Jim Flynn working on a spare. Hard to believe. Jim Flynn has 9 spares in 17 boxes, but he hasn't won a skin yet.
3, 6, 4, 7. Piece of wood in between, which it remains to be seen if it's got the angle to cover the 4 and 7. The shot is to split the 3 and the 6.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Great shot. And worth another look.
It's on the 3, heavy, but the wood carries us 4 and 7. Big mark. It's a carry over now unless Rich Clark or Chris Sargent can throw the strike. Rich Clark is thinking a good fill and another mark. We left it out to the left.
Just 4. Trying the inside route, and it doesn't quite convert, leaving the 3-pin. Any open could be costly here coming down the stretch to the way these scores are right now. Chris Sargent could really use a mark here too. Get himself back into legitimate contention here with 2 boxes to go.
1 pin separate Rich Clark and Joe Ashline, although Joe's got the spare in the 8th. Not far behind, 10 pins is Jim Flynn, but he's got a mark working.
For a $50 skin if that 10-pin goes, but it will not. So we've got another carryover. And Chris Sargent has a shot at the spare that he wants.
Now attention is definitely shifted to the total pinfall. It is so close.
Big spare for Chris Sargent. We move to the 9th box worth $75. But look at the scores.
10 pins. Separate top to bottom. And 1 is behind. Jim Flynn by 10 has got the mark working. Big ball by Joe Ashline.
Oh, my. 8. And a chance for another. I should mention that on the big scoreboard here at the Londonderry Bowling Center, the bowlers don't have the advantage that we have of seeing the total scores. Oh, my.
Oh. Joe can't believe it, neither can I. But that wood came in contact with the left sidewall and bounded in front of the 7-pin. Bad break.
Here's what happened.
Wow, it actually went around the 7-pin. Might attribute some of that to the speed that Joe throws his ball.
Jim Flynn on a spare. Carries 7.
Similar to the shot he had last time. This time he kicks out the 4-pin. 3, 6, and 7. Going to have to split the 3 and 6.
Tried to go the other way and was not able to carry the 7-pin. 10 box for Jim. And this is going to go right down to the final box.
Within 11 of Joe. Rich Clark, 244. Big box for him if he could put a mark up. Last 2 boxes now. He's left it to the left. 1, 3, 6, and the 7. Got to be concentrating on the 1, 3, and 6, and hopefully if he gets those 3, something will take the 7. Although he just had a piece of wood roll in between the 1 and the 3. Might not like that.
Oh,
great shot.
Big shot for Rich Clark.
Great shot.
And puts him in the lead for the skin right now. He'll have $75 unless Chris can take it away or have it here in the 9th.
If I was Rich now, I'd be thinking if I could win the skin in the 10th, I'm coming back next week.
7 fill for Chris Sargent. Not an easy spare leave, however.
No, but it's getting to be that point where it's almost a must.
Yeah, Chris really does need the mark here. He's going to go for it, but can't make it happen. So that's a $75 skin for Rich Clark. Rich and Chris still dominating the skins competition here, but right now the focus is on the battle for first and second, and really it's still anybody's game.
Really? I mean, Chris Sargent's 251. Rich Clark cannot afford to make a mistake on that spare.
It could be real interesting if Joe were to stay open here in the 10th. If he gets a mark, he'll pretty much assure himself of a trip back next week.
Well, I'll tell you, that last pin falling and getting in between the head pin and the 9 pin is going to help him out tremendously. He was looking at the 1, 2, 9, and 10 with no wood. Now he's got the 1, 9, 10 with a couple pieces of wood.
Oh, he's got it.
Big mark.
Great shot. Remember, this last skin here in the 10th is worth $50, but more importantly, the eyes on the scoreboard right now. That is 10 marks for Joe Ashline, including a double strike in game 1.
Ooh.
Not the fill he wanted, just 5. 134 and a 2-game total of 268. Make it 278. 278 for Joe Ashline.
Let's see the battles for second now, I believe. Unless someone was to throw a double strike. Joe Ashline probably is going to be safe.
Well, Rich Clark could still get first if he were to mark again in the 10th. But you're right, Joe Ashline is certainly safe. Unless someone throws a double here.
Now, this could be a big mark for Jim Flynn, and he gets the spare. Still alive.
Didn't want to hurt it, but he did knock it down.
Retrail, as you can see, Rich Clark by just 2 pins. So he needs a real big fill, and he's got to hope that Rich does not fill his spare in the 9th.
And Jim gets a nice mix on a thin hit, and he takes 9. He has a 144 and a 2-game total of 271.
Rich Clark needs 18 pins, including the fill on this spare, so he's got to have a decent fill.
I just don't want to see numbers.
Oh,
my.
not what he needed. Now he needs to convert this.
Just a 3 fill.
He needs this mark now to catch Jim Flynn for second.
Well, he needed a miraculous shot, and it was not to be.
But unless Chris Sargent can throw a strike, bowlers will all compete again for this last skin. 5 pins shy.
Well, Chris Sargent needs 20 here in the 10th to tie for second. So we got a couple of things going on here. We got a $50 skin, and Chris Sargent needs 20 pins to force an overtime to decide second place.
And I'm sure of those 20, he wants a strike right here. That'll win the skin. Ooh!
Oh, he may have it. No.
Oh, my. How did that 7-pin stay up? Didn't look like anything touched it. Big ball.
Got it. Spare. We will have a carryover on the last skin of the day, but right now it comes down to the final ball. If Chris Sargent throws a strike here, we will have a tie for second, and we will have a 1-box roll-off for second in addition to the skin.
What a great match. Final ball.
It's not to be, though, for Chris Sargent. Just 7-132, and he will come up just a few pins short. 268 for Chris Sargent. We'll get a last look at the scoreboard, and how about that? 13 pins separating the 4 bowlers. But what do you know? After all that, it's Joe Ashline and Jim Flynn again, both advancing here on Candlepin Skins. We'll be back to settle that last skin in a minute. To settle our last skin of the day now, Joe Ashline may have settled it right there, but could not get the strike.
Tries to make the bid to end it early.
Jim Flynn.
And so doesn't Jim. 3-6 left, so.
I guess it's only fair that the 2 guys that have been dominating here on Candlepin Skins lately should get the first shot at it. Spare for Joe. Spare for Jim.
All right, guys. We need a strike from somebody.
It's a $50 skin, and only the bowlers that remain tied will continue. Rich Clark. And there's a strike. He will win it unless Chris can match it. And he does not. So the last skin for $50 goes to Rich Clark. He actually is our big skins winner of the day. But Joe Ashline and Jim Flynn will be back next week, and we'll come back to tell you about it in a minute. Here are the totals on this one now. Jim Flynn, Joe Ashline, both advance again, but not by much over Chris Sargent and Rich Clark. And here's the money damage with that last $50. Rich Clark actually was the big skins winner of the day, $180. Chris Sargent with $145. And as so often happens, the 2 guys who win in pinfall didn't do quite as well in skins money. That'll about do it. We're running short on time. Be sure and join us for the season premiere of Stars and Strikes tomorrow at noon. It'll be Pat Pay against Rico Baldinelli. For the whole crew and Dan Murphy, I'm Doug Brown. Have a good weekend, everybody.